You are doing everything right. You are eating less. You are doing more cardio. You cut out the wine. You are drinking your water. You are tracking your food. And yet the scale is not moving. Your midsection keeps expanding, and you are more exhausted than you have ever been in your life. And maybe the most frustrating part of all of it is that you feel like you are working so hard. You feel like you are doing the things, and your body is just not responding. I want to tell you something before we go any further. This is not a willpower problem. This is not a discipline problem. And it is most definitely not a character flaw. What is happening in your body right now is a hormonal and physiological response to chronic stress. And once you understand the mechanism, everything starts to make sense. The weight, the cravings, the exhaustion, the mood swings, all of it. That is what we are unpacking today. Welcome to the Living Simpler podcast. I am Amy, and I am so glad you are here. Today, we are going deep on cortisol, and specifically on how chronic stress is silently driving belly fat, hijacking your cravings, wrecking your sleep, suppressing your thyroid, and stealing your progesterone in perimenopause. This is one of the most important conversations I think we can have as women in our late 30s, 40s, and into our 50s, because the standard advice that we have all been given, eat less and move more, is not only incomplete when cortisol is elevated. In some cases, it is actively making things worse. So let's start at the beginning. Cortisol is not your enemy. I want to be really clear about that. Cortisol is a steroid hormone produced by your adrenal glands, and it serves a critical purpose. It is your primary stress response hormone. When you are in danger, real or perceived, cortisol floods your system to give you the energy and the focus you need to respond. Your heart rate increases, your blood sugar rises, non-essential systems like digestion and reproduction and immune function slow down so that all available resources can go toward the threat. This system is brilliant. It is designed to save your life. The problem is that it was designed for short-term threats, a predator, a fire, a moment of acute danger that you respond to and then recover from. It was not designed for the kind of stress most women are living with right now, the kind where you wake up already behind, where your inbox is a source of low-grade anxiety from the moment you open your eyes, where you are running a business or a household or both, managing other people's needs, not sleeping enough, not eating enough of the right things, over-exercising because you think you should, and carrying a mental load that never fully empties. That kind of stress does not have a clear beginning and end. It is chronic. It is relentless. And your body does not know the difference between the stress of missing a deadline and the stress of being chased by something dangerous. It just knows you signaled threat. And so it keeps producing cortisol. And when cortisol is chronically elevated, everything changes. Let's talk about what happens first to your insulin and your blood sugar, because this is the direct line between stress and belly fat, and most women have never heard it explained this way. When cortisol rises, it triggers the release of glucose into your bloodstream. This is intentional. Your body is preparing to fight or flee, and it needs fast energy. So it breaks down stored glycogen and releases sugar into your blood to fuel your muscles and your brain. Your blood sugar spikes. Now your pancreas responds by releasing insulin to bring that blood sugar back down. But here is where it gets complicated. If you are in a constant state of stress, this cycle is happening over and over, day after day. Cortisol up, blood sugar up, insulin up, blood sugar down, cortisol up again. Over time, your cells start to become less responsive to insulin. They have been flooded with it so many times that they start to tune it out. This is the beginning of insulin resistance. And one of the primary places your body stores the excess glucose it cannot manage effectively, visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat that sits around your organs and shows up as that stubborn midsection weight that will not budge no matter how many crunches you do. This is not a calorie problem. This is not a laziness problem. This is a cortisol-driven insulin problem. And here is what makes it so insidious for women in perimenopause. Estrogen helps your cells stay sensitive to insulin. As estrogen begins to decline in perimenopause, you lose some of that natural insulin protection. So the cortisol insulin cycle hits harder, the belly fat accumulates faster, and the standard advice of eating less and exercising more does not address the root cause at all. Now let's talk about progesterone, because this is the piece that breaks so many women's hearts when they finally understand it. Progesterone is your calming, balancing, sleep-supportive hormone. It counterbalances estrogen, it supports your mood, it helps you sleep deeply, it reduces anxiety, and it is absolutely essential for feeling like yourself. In perimenopause, progesterone is actually the first hormone to decline. Before estrogen drops significantly, progesterone starts pulling back, and this is why so many women in their late 30s and early 40s start feeling off before they have any obvious menopausal symptoms. The anxiety that appeared out of nowhere, the sleep that started getting lighter, the PMS that got worse, that is often progesterone beginning to fall. Now here is where cortisol becomes the thief. Your body makes both cortisol and progesterone from the same raw material. That raw material is a hormone called pregnenolone, and when your body is under chronic stress and it needs to keep producing cortisol, it will preferentially use your available pregnenolone to make cortisol instead of progesterone. This is called the pregnenolone steal, and it is one of the most significant and under-recognized reasons why women in perimenopause feel so hormonally depleted, even when their estrogen levels look okay on paper. Your body is literally robbing your progesterone supply to fund your stress response. The downstream effects of low progesterone include worsened anxiety, disrupted sleep, heavier periods, increased sensitivity to estrogen, more pronounced PMS, and a greater experience of emotional volatility. And because progesterone supports thermogenesis, meaning the rate at which your body generates heat and burns energy, low progesterone also contributes to a slower metabolism. So chronic stress is stealing your calm, wrecking your sleep, and slowing your metabolism all at the same time. Let's talk about your thyroid now, because this connection does not get nearly enough attention. Your thyroid produces two primary hormones, T4, which is the inactive storage form, and T3, which is the active form that your cells actually use. T4 has to be converted into T3 primarily in your liver and your gut, and then your cells need to be able to use that T3 effectively. Cortisol disrupts this process at multiple points. First, chronic cortisol elevation suppresses TSH, which is the signal from your brain that tells your thyroid to produce hormones in the first place. So high cortisol can directly reduce thyroid output. Second, cortisol inhibits the conversion of T4 to active T3. Instead of converting to T3, more of your T4 gets converted to something called reverse T3. Reverse T3 is essentially a blocking molecule. It fits into your thyroid receptors but does not activate them. It just sits there and blocks the real T3 from doing its job. What does this look like in real life? You feel cold all the time. Your hair starts thinning, your eyebrows thin on the outer edges, your skin is dry, your digestion slows down, you feel mentally foggy and slow. You are gaining weight even though you are eating the same amount. And your standard thyroid test comes back normal because most standard tests only look at TSH and T4, not at T3, reverse T3, or thyroid antibodies. This is why so many women are told their thyroid is fine when they know something is wrong, and the standard testing is not telling the full story, and the cortisol connection is almost never addressed. If you suspect thyroid issues are part of your picture, ask your provider for a full thyroid panel. You want TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and thyroid peroxidase antibodies at a minimum. Do not accept a standard 2-marker panel as a complete picture of your thyroid health. You deserve the full picture. Now let's talk about cravings, because this is where so many women feel the most shame, and I want to dismantle that right now. When cortisol is chronically elevated, it directly increases your appetite for specific types of food, not all food. Specific food, high sugar food, high fat food, high calorie dense food, comfort food. This is not weakness, this is biology. Here is the mechanism. cortisol raises blood sugar, as we talked about. Then insulin comes in and drives that blood sugar down. When blood sugar drops, your brain registers a low fuel signal and triggers cravings for fast glucose, meaning sugar, refined carbohydrates, anything that will raise your blood sugar quickly. At the same time, chronic stress depletes serotonin, which is your feel-good neurotransmitter, and one of the fastest ways your brain knows to raise serotonin is through carbohydrate intake. Carbohydrates trigger insulin, and insulin drives tryptophan into the brain, where it gets converted to serotonin. So your cravings for sugar and carbohydrates when you are stressed are your brain's attempt to self-medicate, to raise serotonin to feel better. Cortisol also stimulates the release of neuropeptide Y, which is a brain chemical that specifically increases appetite for carbohydrate-dense foods. And on top of all of this, cortisol suppresses the hormone leptin, which is your satiety signal. Leptin tells your brain that you have had enough to eat. When leptin is suppressed, your brain does not get the signal that you are full and you keep eating past the point of genuine hunger. This is why restrictive dieting, while stressed, is almost always ineffective. You are fighting against a cascade of hormonal signals that are all pushing in the same direction. Eat more, eat sugar, do not stop. The answer is not more willpower. The answer is addressing the cortisol. And now let's talk about sleep, because this is both a consequence of high cortisol and a driver of it, and the cycle can become incredibly difficult to break. We covered cortisol's role in sleep disruption in our last episode in detail, so I will not go as deep here, but I want to connect it specifically to the belly fat and weight gain conversation. When you do not sleep enough, two things happen hormonally that are directly relevant to weight. Ghrelin goes up. Ghrelin is your hunger hormone. When you are sleep deprived, ghrelin rises and you feel significantly hungrier, especially for calorie-dense foods. And leptin goes down. Again, that is your satiety signal, so you are hungrier and you cannot tell when you are full. Studies consistently show that sleep-deprived individuals consume 300 to 500 more calories per day on average compared to those who are sleeping adequately. And those calories tend to be disproportionately from sugar and refined carbohydrates. But here is the part that really matters for the cortisol conversation. Sleep deprivation directly raises cortisol. Not enough sleep triggers your stress response. So you go from high cortisol disrupting your sleep to disrupted sleep raising your cortisol to elevated cortisol driving insulin resistance and belly fat to belly fat producing its own inflammatory signals that further disrupt this sleep. It becomes a cycle, and the only way to interrupt the cycle is to address it from multiple angles at the same time. Let's talk about exercise, because this one is counterintuitive, and I know it is going to be hard for some of you to hear. More cardio is not the answer when cortisol is already high. Cardiovascular exercise, especially long duration, moderate to high intensity cardio, raises cortisol. That is a normal and expected physiological response. In a well-rested, well-nourished body with a healthy stress load, cortisol rises during exercise and then comes back down during recovery, and the net effect is positive. But when you are already chronically stressed, when your cortisol is already elevated most of the time, adding more high-intensity cardio is adding more cortisol to a system that is already flooded with it. This is why so many women in perimenopause describe doing more cardio than ever before and gaining weight anyway. Their body is interpreting the additional exercise stress on top of life stress as a threat, and it is responding by holding on to fat, particularly visceral fat, around the midsection as a protective survival mechanism. This does not mean stop moving. Movement is essential for hormone balance, insulin sensitivity, lymphatic flow, mood regulation, and everything else we care about. What it means is shift the type of movement. Strength training is one of the most powerful interventions for insulin resistance and cortisol regulation. Building muscle increases your insulin sensitivity, it improves glucose uptake, it supports your metabolism long-term, and moderate strength training does not spike cortisol the way chronic cardio does. Walking is underrated almost universally, A 30 to 45-minute walk at a comfortable pace lowers cortisol, improves insulin sensitivity, supports lymphatic drainage, and calms your nervous system. It is one of the most effective things you can do for perimenopause weight management, and it does not require a gym. Pilates and Barre are brilliant for this phase of life. Controlled, resistance-based movement that builds strength and body awareness without flooding your system with additional cortisol. If you have been dismissing these as too easy, I would lovingly challenge that assumption. Reduce your high-intensity cardio sessions. If you are doing 5 or 6 intense cardio workouts a week, consider cutting that to 2 and replacing the others with strength training, walking, and restorative movement. Give your system a chance to come down. And now let's bring this all together with a practical protocol, because I want you to leave today with a clear picture of what to actually do. The first and most important thing is to get tested, not guess. You cannot know what is driving your symptoms without data. Ask your provider for a full cortisol panel, ideally a 4-point salivary or urinary cortisol test that measures your levels at multiple points throughout the day. This gives you a picture of your cortisol curve, not just a single snapshot. Also ask for fasting insulin, not just blood glucose. Most standard panels only check blood glucose, but fasting insulin tells you whether insulin resistance is developing before it shows up as blood sugar problems. Ask for a full thyroid panel, as I mentioned earlier, TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies. And ask for your sex hormones, including estradiol, progesterone, and DHEAS, which is the adrenal hormone that also gets depleted under chronic stress. Do not guess. Test. Second, eat to support cortisol, not fight it. This means eating enough. Undereating is a stress signal. If you are restricting calories heavily while already stressed, your body is getting 2 threat signals at once, and it will hold onto fat as a survival response. Eat protein at every meal. Aim for 30 to 40 grams per meal. Protein stabilizes blood sugar, supports muscle preservation, and reduces the cortisol-driven blood sugar swings that trigger cravings. Eat your carbohydrates from whole food sources and pair them always with protein and fat. Sweet potatoes with butter and chicken, berries with full-fat Greek yogurt. Never eat refined carbohydrates alone. Eat breakfast within 60 to 90 minutes of waking. Skipping breakfast when cortisol is already elevated increases the cortisol spike in the morning and starts your blood sugar cycle on a bad note. If you do intermittent fasting and you are experiencing the symptoms we talked about today, consider that fasting may not be the right tool for your body right now. It is worth reassessing. Prioritize magnesium-rich foods. Magnesium is depleted by cortisol, and most women are already deficient. Dark chocolate with at least 70% cacao, pumpkin seeds, leafy greens, avocado, and wild-caught fish are all excellent sources. Third, address your nervous system directly and consistently. Your nervous system needs active, intentional downregulation every single day, not once in a while, not when you remember, every day. This can be 5 minutes of breath work in the morning before you look at your phone. It can be the physiological sigh technique we talked about in the last episode, which takes less than 2 minutes. It can be 5 minutes of legs up the wall before bed. It can be a short walk without your phone. It can be sitting outside in natural lights in silence for 10 minutes. The specific practice matters less than the consistency of it. Your nervous system learns through repetition. You are literally retraining your threat detection system to recognize that you are safe. That takes time, and it takes showing up every day. Fourth, protect your sleep like it is your most important health intervention, because it is. Go to bed at a consistent time. Aim for 10 p.m. or earlier if possible. The hours before midnight have disproportionately deep, slow-wave sleep that is critical for cortisol regulation and hormone repair. Keep your room cool, dark, and quiet. Between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit is the target range for optimal sleep architecture. No screens for at least 60 minutes before bed. The blue light suppresses melatonin, and the stimulating content keeps your sympathetic nervous system engaged. Consider magnesium glycinate before bed, 300 to 400 milligrams. This is one of the most consistently supported interventions for sleep quality and cortisol regulation, and it is accessible and affordable. If you are waking at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. consistently, revisit the blood sugar piece. Have a small protein and fat snack before bed and see if that changes your wake pattern within a week. Fifth, reduce your cortisol inputs deliberately. This is the lifestyle piece, and I know it is the hardest one because it requires real decisions about how you are spending your time and your energy. Start by auditing your stimulants. Caffeine raises cortisol. This does not mean eliminate coffee, but it does mean be strategic. Do not drink coffee on an empty stomach. Do not have caffeine after noon if you are struggling with sleep. And if you are drinking more than 2 cups a day, consider whether you are using caffeine to compensate for a cortisol and energy problem that needs a different solution. Look at your information intake. Every negative news cycle, every stressful social media scroll, every alarming podcast or article is a cortisol input. You do not have to live under a rock, but you do need to be intentional about what you are letting into your nervous system and when. Look at your relational and emotional inputs. Difficult relationships, people-pleasing patterns, saying yes when your whole body is saying no. These are cortisol inputs. I am not saying this to overwhelm you. I am saying it because the body does not separate emotional stress from physical stress. It is all cortisol to your adrenals. And finally, please be patient with yourself and with this process. If your cortisol has been elevated for months or years, you are not going to reset it in a week. The research on HPA axis recovery, that is your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the stress response system, suggests that meaningful recovery takes anywhere from 3 to 12 months of consistent supportive intervention, depending on how long and how severely the system has been dysregulated. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And every single choice you make that reduces your cortisol load and supports your hormones is moving you in the right direction, even when you cannot see it yet. The belly fat is not permanent. The cravings are not permanent. The exhaustion is not a life sentence. These are symptoms of a system under too much pressure for too long. And systems can heal when they get the right support. You are not broken. You are responding. And now you know what to do about it. If today's episode resonated with you, the best thing you can do is share it with a woman in your life who is doing all the right things and still struggling. She needs to hear this explanation. She needs to know it is not her fault. And if you are ready to go deeper, to actually run the labs, understand your own cortisol curve, and build a protocol specific to your body and your life, that is exactly the work we do inside the Living Simpler Collective. We have resources, community, and real guidance for women who are done guessing and ready to actually get answers. The link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today. I am genuinely grateful for every one of you who shows up to this podcast and takes this information seriously, because taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is the foundation of everything else you're trying to build and be and give. You deserve a body that feels good to live in. I will see you in the next episode. Until then, keep it simple, keep it intentional, and keep going.